Welcome to the first class on Slenderful Eating in the Slender for Good program. This is about foundational principles of Slenderful Eating. There's 4 parts of that, and this is the first part. In this video, we're going to highlight this one foundational principle, and it's the first step of eating slenderfully to release your excess weight in a healthy and sustainable way. You'll get a class and learn more about these principles in every module over the course of your program. At the end of this class, you'll have a good understanding of how and why you need to eat a lot more highly nutritious foods. You'll be empowered to eat differently from other people around you, and that's what you need to do if you're going to achieve different outcomes from other people around you as it pertains to your health and living in a right-sized body. This is important because it's really difficult to change your eating to become slender for good if you feel deprived or if you feel that everyone around you gets to eat yummy things and you don't. It really helps you master slenderful eating when you understand what's good to eat, what's not, and why. It helps when you understand and maybe even feel good about eating more highly nutritious foods, understanding that these are what humans are meant to eat. And when you employ this first foundational principle and you're eating more of the nutritious foods, it's going to help you be more energized, and that's going to support the other aspects of your weight loss journey. I'm going to share an example. You might have heard me talk before about my client Bridget, and this step made a really huge difference for her. She was 80 pounds overweight at age 54, and at the time she contacted me, she had elevated blood sugar and she was well on her way to developing type 2 diabetes. And her husband had just had a serious heart attack, and she was feeling desperate about figuring out how to eat healthier. So the first thing we did is we worked together on how she could greatly increase the amount of nutritious foods that would help to heal her body and her brain. And this made a really big difference for her. It made it possible for her to eliminate certain foods that were causing her to overeat and doing harm to her body and elevating her blood sugar. And gradually she learned to love eating her vegetables, she built healthy eating habits, and she lost all her excess weight. These days, Bridget feels younger and healthier than she has in a long time. Her sugar levels are back to normal, and because she's feeding her family differently, her husband's blood pressure and heart functions are steadily improving. She is so happy to have found a way to feed her family that improves their energy and their health and their longevity. So there's several key changes we need to make to our eating in order to release our excess weight in a healthy and sustainable way. And in this class, we'll cover the first one in some depth. That is eating more highly nutritious foods. And I'll give you some of the research behind these to support your success making these changes. The first point, we've talked about this before, but overweight, obesity, and extreme obesity are on the rise. If you look at the red dotted lines in this graph, you can see from 1960 to 2012, obesity among women in the United States increased from about 10% to more than 35%. And extreme obesity climbed from near 0% to more than 5%. So it's really clear that something has changed in our eating that's making us much more obese. And if you look at this graph, you can see as obesity increases, so does cardiovascular disease. So a lot of my clients are concerned about their heart health, and one of the reasons they've really gotten motivated to change their eating is because they're starting to have some heart concerns. Diabetes also, the risk of diabetes rises with obesity. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've noticed around me dialysis centers are cropping up everywhere. There's just way more diabetes than there should be, than there ever was. And it's really has a big impact on people's health. I am seeing people in the nursing homes with a lot of really serious health issues associated with excess sugar in their blood and with having diabetes. And we often think it's our genes that are causing these diseases, like heart disease and diabetes. But it turns out when you do the research and you look really carefully at what's accounting for these diseases, genetics only account for 10% to 20% of our risk for these diseases. Our diet accounts for most of the risk. And it's primarily our diet that's causing disease and disability. If you look at this little infographic, it's showing that our diet is causing a lot more disease and disability than tobacco or alcohol or lack of exercise. And I'm showing this book here, How Not to Die. I really recommend this book. Dr. Michael Greger wrote the book, and he argues that research supports the conclusion that our diet is the number one cause of premature death and the number one cause of disability. And he cites research on how to prevent a wide variety of diseases using primarily dietary changes. He has chapters on how not to die of heart disease, how not to die of cancer, diabetes, brain disease, lung disease, etc. And much of the content I'm going to share in this class today comes from his book. Now, to get some perspective about where we're headed, you're going to learn to master the fundamentals of Slenderful Eating, along with the fundamentals of Slenderful mindsets, and building an environment that supports Slenderful Eating and thinking over the course of the Slender for Good program. And today we're focusing on the first foundational principle of Slenderful Eating, which is to eat more real, highly nutritious food. That's more fruits, vegetables, and other whole plant foods like beans, legumes, whole grains, nuts, and seeds. The reason this works is you're giving your body the nutrients it really needs. When you're eating more highly nutritious foods, it's going to help you feel full and satisfied. Your energy and mental clarity will improve, and it's going to make it easier to eliminate addictive food-like substances that basically break your brain and shut down satiety signals. I'll talk more about that in the next module. But for now, I'm going to give you various examples of how fruits, vegetables, and other plant foods benefit your body and your health. I know you've heard since childhood it's important to eat your vegetables. Now I want you to really understand how and why it's important to eat a lot more of these foods as you start your Slender for Good journey. The first reason eating more fruits and vegetables is important is that we need to get an adequate amount of fiber in our diets. I want to help you understand the importance of this. So humans evolved eating huge amounts of fiber, like over 100 grams a day. That's about 10 times more than the average person eats today. And fiber is really important because it keeps us regular. It binds to toxins like lead and mercury in our system and flushes them away. So once our body has taken the nutrients from our food, we want the waste carried out efficiently in a reasonable amount of time. We don't want to be carrying around a week or more of waste in our bowels because we're not eating enough fiber. And we don't want to hold on to those toxins in our bodies. But only 3% of Americans are getting the recommended minimal daily intake of fiber. So this is a massive nutrient deficiency that makes a big difference. When we're not getting enough fiber, unwanted waste products get reabsorbed into our bodies, and our bodies aren't as effective at detoxifying themselves. We need to eat our fruit, veggies, beans, etc. to get enough fiber to eliminate the toxins from our systems. And then also, eating more plant foods protects us against heart disease. It lowers our cholesterol levels, and it reduces the risk of heart disease and premature death. In fact, if you look at places where people eat traditional diets, not like the Western diet, the traditional human diet, which is a lot of plants, you don't see heart disease at all. And then when the Western diet moves into a location, heart disease rates start climbing. One of the biggest studies proving this is the China study, which I'm referencing on this slide. As heart disease started to climb in Chinese cities, they decided to study the diets of rural Chinese and urban Chinese and see what was making the difference. And they found that the urban Chinese populations had greatly reduced their plant foods, and they had adopted a more Western diet with highly processed foods and animal products. So as the diet becomes more Western and people are eating more highly processed foods and animal products, we're seeing more heart disease. There have also been some really good intervention studies where they put heart patients on plant-based diets, and they were able to achieve a big lowering of cholesterol. In fact, changing the diet was more effective than prescribing statins, and it didn't have the risks. So I think I'd rather eat the plants. I don't know about you. And eating more fruits and vegetables protects against cancer too. Fiber is one of the keys to reducing the risk of cancer, and it's because fiber moves toxins out of our systems. Also, cruciferous vegetables, which are broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, they appear to make us more resilient at a subcellular level. They help to suppress metastatic spread. So I'm going to tell you about a couple studies here. We know that in the United States, women in the United States have 10 times more colorectal cancer than women in India. That's huge. I think if it was twice as much, it would be really bad, but 10 times is terrible. And one thing that people believe is causing this is the Indians, in Indian cooking, they use the spice turmeric, which is, you can actually show in vitro when you take cancer cells into a petri dish and you put some turmeric on them, it appears to effectively kill them. And so it seems like maybe when we eat curcumin, turmeric, the part of our food that doesn't get absorbed into our blood ends up in our colon, and that can that turmeric in the cells lining our large intestine can be protecting us from the kinds of tumors we can get there. There was a study too that showed they gave some people 6 months of curcumin plus quercetin, which is found in red onions and grapes, and they decreased the number and size of polyps by more than half in patients with a hereditary form of colorectal cancer, again with no side effects. And finally, I love this study. There's a study about treating esophageal cancer, which is a really tough one. Most patients die within the first year, and the 5-year survival rate is less than 20%. So they didn't have really effective ways of treating this cancer, and they decided to try berries. In a randomized clinical trial, they gave high levels of strawberries to a group, the treatment group, and they found that it was able to reverse the progress of the disease in 80% of the patients, and half of the patients walked away disease-free. So it really looks like fruits and vegetables and other plant foods help protect us against cancer. And in addition to fiber, there are other beneficial elements of plants. When we eat the seeds of plants, like whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds, we're eating phytates. And these are found to detoxify iron in the body, excess iron, which can otherwise generate harmful free radicals. And fiber and phytates are just 2 of the specific compounds we know that benefit us. How many other beneficial compounds are in the fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, etc., that humans evolved to eat that we don't even know about? Here's another way that eating fruits and vegetables protects us. It protects our lung functions too. It seems to both prevent and stop the progression of COPD, emphysema, and it reduces the odds of suffering from allergic asthma also. And what about this? Eating more fruits and vegetables, and especially antioxidant-rich foods, has been shown to be protective of our brains too, reducing the risk of stroke and reducing cognitive decline. Antioxidant-rich diets appear to protect against stroke by preventing the circulation of oxidized fats in the bloodstream that can damage the sensitive walls of small blood vessels in the brain. They also help decrease artery stiffness, they prevent blood clots from forming, and they lower blood pressure and inflammation. And there's increasing evidence that these kind of diet changes could prevent millions of cases of Alzheimer's every year. Here's another berry study. Women who eat 1 serving of blueberries and 2 servings of strawberries per week have slower rates of cognitive decline by as much as 2.5 years compared with those who don't eat berries. In other words, you can easily protect your brain functions for about 2 extra years just by adding a handful of berries a few times a week. What's good for our hearts is also good for our heads. I like that. So it just makes sense, when doctors have to give us medicines or we take supplements, we're trying to target one problem. And lots of times, we may be helping that one problem, but causing another problem somewhere else. But when it comes to using food as medicine, eating antioxidants is good for our bodies in all the ways. So eat the colorful antioxidant-rich foods to protect your brain. So where do you get antioxidants from? I want you to know, fresh salmon has 3 units. Chicken has 5 units of antioxidants. Plant foods contain 64 times more antioxidants than animal foods. So some berries have over 1,000 units of antioxidants, and the most antioxidant-rich foods are herbs and spices. If you add cinnamon to your breakfast, you're adding 100 units of antioxidants. So to get enough antioxidants, try to eat a variety of fruits, vegetables, herbs, and spices at every meal. And eating plant foods has also been shown to protect against infection. Vegetables, especially cruciferous vegetables, boost our immune systems. It seems like they contain certain compounds that are necessary to maintaining the body's intestinal defenses. Broccoli and berries have both been found to boost white blood cells. Mushrooms have been found to boost immunity and have an anti-inflammatory effect. I know I definitely experienced a big reduction in inflammation and pain in my system when I really started eating a lot more vegetables. And there was a study looking at adults between 65 and 85, and where some of them were supposed to eat more vegetables, and the ones who ate more vegetables showed improved antibody responses to a vaccine. And one more important health benefit of eating enough plant foods is that it protects us against diabetes. Diabetes is partly a disease of excess sugar in the blood and partly a disease of lipotoxicity, which is excess fat spilling into the blood. When our diets are too high in saturated fats and sugars, that produces the insulin-resistant state that causes diabetes and all the related health problems. When we look at people who eat a plant-based diet, they have a small fraction of the rate of diabetes compared to people who eat an animal-based diet, even at the same weight. And plant-based diets improve blood sugar. And in a double-blind research study, which is the best kind of research we can do, the group that was eating more beans and legumes got healthier than the group that reduced their calories. So calorie reduction is what's often recommended to people who are living with diabetes by their doctors. But if their doctors would just tell them to eat more lentils and chickpeas and beans, they would get a lot healthier than reducing their calories. So I'm not suggesting you need to become a vegan or a vegetarian, but I am suggesting you will probably benefit from eating a lot more fruits, vegetables, and other whole plant foods, both to improve your health and to release your excess weight. So let's talk about how they help us get to a healthy weight. Eating a lot more plant foods supports weight loss for a number of reasons. You get all these health benefits, you lower your blood sugar, and you feel more satisfied and full when you're eating a lot more fruits and vegetables. So let's talk about this study of 13,000 Americans where they compared the nutrient intake of those who ate meat and those who didn't. Calorie for calorie, the people eating vegetarian diets got higher intakes of nearly every nutrient: fiber, vitamin A, vitamins B, C, and E, calcium, magnesium, iron, and potassium. And they also were taking in fewer harmful substances like saturated fat and cholesterol. People eating plant-based diets had improved blood sugar. I know my blood sugar went from elevated back to normal when I started eating a lot more plants. And plant-based diet eaters had an 11% higher resting metabolic rate, so they're burning more calories in their sleep. And also, plant-based diets are a lot easier for people to maintain than calorie reduction diets. They have more feelings of satisfaction with the food, and they have better moods. So to summarize, if you want to be slender, happy, and healthy, you need to eat quite differently from everyone else. Hopefully you now have a much better understanding of how and why you ought to eat a lot more nutrient-rich foods. And as you eat more of these highly nutritious foods, you'll also be better able to cut out the highly processed, low-nutrient foods that just pack on the pounds and the fat without real nutritional benefit. Now let's get real specific. What are Slender for Good recommendations for weight loss when it comes to eating more highly nutritious foods? I'm going to recommend that you eat 2 servings of fruit per day, 1 at breakfast and 1 at lunch. Serving sizes are, for example, 6 ounces of berries or pineapple, or 1 of apple, pear, orange, mango, banana, etc. It's going to be important to identify the fruits and vegetables that you like and which fruits you're going to eat for breakfast and which fruits you're going to eat for lunch. I want you to start eating 20 to 24 ounces of vegetables every day at lunch and dinner. This is going to get a lot more nutrition on board, and it's really going to boost your energy. It's also going to help you feel full. So decide whether you're going to eat 10, 12, or 14 ounces of vegetables at lunch, and same thing for dinner, 10, 12, or 14 ounces. For many people, it's best to make a decision and stick with it for a period of time rather than going by how you feel that day. Find your go-to vegetables for lunch and dinner, and when it comes to your health, you get bonus points for green leafy vegetables and cruciferous vegetables. And I'm going to invite you to eat 1 serving of whole grain with breakfast. That can be oatmeal, rice, quinoa, There are some dry cereals that are truly made with whole grains, like some shredded wheats. You got to make sure there's no flour or sugar. And Uncle Sam's is a good one, and Ezekiel's another good one. And for now, I encourage you to eliminate packaged processed foods like chips and any foods made with added sugar or flour. No pastries, bread, or pasta. And we'll talk more about that next time. So what can you expect as you make these changes? I want you to understand our bodies are complex adaptive systems, and they don't respond in linear ways to changes we make. They respond, but not always exactly in the way we think they're going to. But as you increase the highly nutritious foods you're eating, you can generally expect to feel more full and satisfied, like the amount of food you're eating is enough. You can expect to experience more increased energy and greater mental clarity. You can expect to feel improved mood. I'll talk more about that another time, but in general, better nutrition greatly helps improve our mood for real reasons related to our biochemistry and our brain. You'll find it's easier to let go of destructive food choices and to eliminate cravings, and you're not going to be able to stick with any kind of food plan where you're constantly having cravings and having to battle them all the time. So we really want to be able to get rid of foods that are going to keep our cravings going. As you increase the highly nutritious foods, you'll find you're supported in releasing excess weight. You may also experience increased intestinal gas and or constipation. So I'm going to give a little bit of advice here about that. First, I want you to understand that your gut flora are just struggling to keep up with all the fiber you're throwing at it, and that can cause your system to back up. I want you to understand it can take months for your gut flora to adapt to the changes. So as you're putting good foods in there that bring healthy bacteria with them, they also have to compete with the destructive bacteria that's in there. And this battle can manifest in these ways like gas, bloating, and constipation. I invite you, don't let it stop you from eating the good stuff. You can increase these foods gradually if those symptoms are uncomfortable to you. And it can really help to increase your water intake and to move more. Also, sometimes when people are having trouble moving the bowels, they may need a little bit more fat in the diet, so you might want to add some avocado or nuts or olives to your salad at lunchtime, etc. In addition to feeling better and reducing weight, remember you're improving your health when you increase the vegetables, fruits, and other plant foods you eat. You're improving your immune functions. You're improving your blood sugar, your heart and lung functions. You're protecting your body against cancer and bone loss, stroke, and cognitive decline. So with all these benefits, in addition to being able to release the excess weight, is it worth having a little more intestinal gas and constipation for a few months? You started to learn why you need to eat differently from those around you in order to become slender for good. And you'll keep learning more about this in each module so you can become slender in a healthy and sustainable way. So I invite you to get into action on this foundational principle of slenderful eating, and there's a worksheet to help you. And you're on the path to getting slender for good if you see why you need to eat differently from other people around you. If you're convinced to start eating a lot more highly nutritious foods, and maybe you're even starting to feel good about eating this way and getting ready to let go of the highly processed, cravingful foods. I'm excited for you. This is really going to make a difference in your life in big ways. All right, we'll see you in the next class.